Hi, I'm Blake Rayhans.
And I'm Stacie Mallon.
And you are listening to the Optimized AF podcast.
We know life is hard. We're here to make it simple.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Optimized AF podcast. I am Blake.
And I am Stacie.
God, we're so glad you guys are here with us.
We're so excited.
We are just chomping at the bit.
I got my pashmina on, feeling I'm like channeling I don't know if this is my diva or my zen today. So we're ready to roll and talk a little bit more about habits and optimization, but we'll dig into accountability a little further. We talked about this in the last episode, and as promised, we're gonna every once in a while tell a little bit of a story. We're definitely gonna have some guests on soon. We're coordinating with some folks to come on. One thing that we said that we would talk about is a little bit of a soundtrack. And I want to give a shout to my to a friend of mine, Brian Moore. He has just launched a company called Life Tracks, and it's really based on this theory that music moves people and connects people, and that you really have a soundtrack for your life. If you think about, something as simple as your senior prom or your wedding or your major events in your life, you think of music.
Yeah, I think we were talking about this on an earlier conversation, that music, food, smells, but really music, because
Smells.
I think it...
Don't go there this morning.
Too early in the morning for the smell one. Think about it, though. I could probably just say cool water cologne.
Yeah.
And there's somebody listening out there right now that could smell that and go, oh, yeah, absolutely. Or eternity. I mean, come on. Yeah. There was these colognes that if you grew up in the 80s and the 90s, there were these scents that will probably transport you back. And music has, I think, and we believe, probably even more power because it moves your body, right? And you think about the power of movement. We talked about that sometimes when it comes into how you start your day and your habits and how you get going. Change your state, change your mindset, move your body, and music has the power to do that.
So what's your soundtrack for your day today?
For my day today. So this is going to be it's going to sound a little strange, possibly, but
you're never strange.
If you're listening and you know me, you probably know that a unique, very useless talent that I have is I know nearly every word to the movie Top Gun. It's sort of annoying if you've ever watched the movie with me, but every character, every line, and in that the theme song for Top Gun, and if you maybe we'll link to it or something, you can play it, but it has this amazing build up to it, and it has this just theme, this beat that drops to it. And as we're coming in to do these podcasts, we want to come in and bring you guys energy. We want to come in and bring you guys knowledge. We want to come and bring our A game. And that was my soundtrack for the.
Is that Highway to the Danger Zone?
No. This is the. Oh gosh, now you're gonna. It's by
and again, we're gonna have a Spotify playlist for you of all of our theme songs, so you can gleefully download what's in our brain, which I wouldn't invite anybody to do. But if you would like to listen to the soundtrack music, so which song is it?
So it's Top Gun Anthem. Okay. Right, by Harold Faltermeyer. So moving on. As we continue on, though, we're coming in today. We're bringing you guys the continuation of accountability. Right? Habits, routines. How do you put those things into practice? How do you hold yourself accountable to those? Last episode, we talked about accountability partners, and we talked about accountability buddies, and we talked about that this was an intentional act that we were asking you to do of finding this person, finding someone out there who could hold you accountable to doing the thing you said you wanted to do. So today, it was kind of my turn to tell a story from my past and how this sort of came to my world. And, my hope and Stacie's hope in us sharing some of the stories about us is that you can relate. And not everybody's going to relate, but there's probably an aspect to the story that somebody can connect with. And we do both very deeply believe in the art of storytelling, and that so much power can be learned from that. So when I think about accountability, on a previous episode, I shared with you all that I really truly feel like it was instilled in me. My dad would just kind of raise us that way. You did what you say you were going to do. You were a man of your word. Those were things that were said often. And I was reminded as we prepared for this episode of an event that took place when I was, I think it was either a sophomore or a junior in high school. And I was a baseball player for another episode. But I was living on my own. And I'll go into deeper information on that maybe later. But the reason I share that with you is that the story takes place that we weren't together. Okay. I had a phone call with him. I had an opportunity for the first time in my life that I could remember of having a legitimate, what I would define as a vacation. And as a probably 16-year-old, this was really exciting for me. I had an opportunity. My mom and her husband, so this is a blended family. They wanted to sort of put a trip together to San Diego to bring the kids together. They were newly married. I don't remember how many years at that point, but the point was, I was incredibly excited to have an opportunity to do this. My vacations growing up were because we were moving, right? If we were traveling anywhere, it's because we were relocating, and we might stop somewhere on the way, right? Typically for us, it was the Grand Canyon. But here I was, and I was having a phone conversation, and in the conversation with my dad, I brought it up to him. I said, hey, I'm going to miss probably about 3 or 4 practices and a couple of games. I'm going to go on this trip. And the beautiful thing about the way my dad raised us is he had this way of being intense, but in the right moments, just giving you an idea or asking you a question that profoundly made you feel accountable to what you were supposed to do. And in this instance, he said, well, what came up first, this vacation or the commitment that you made to your team? And I remember as a teenager and having this opportunity, I was so angry and not proudful of this moment, but in that moment when I hung up the phone, my anger and my rage took over. And as a stupid teenager, you make stupid mistakes, and I put my fist through a wall. And I remember in that moment, I just kind of stopped and I was like, what are you doing? And I realized that I wasn't angry at him stopping me, from going on this vacation. I was angry at him being right. And he was right, because I knew I should be better accountable to myself, and I made a commitment to my teammates. And I shared with Stacie when I was telling her about this story is that the odd thing is the universe sort of sent me an even stronger message, because as I brought my fist out of the drywall, I had realized that the 2x4 stud was just on the outside of my pinky. And if I had been even a fraction of an inch over, not only would I have missed 3 practices and 2 games, I would have been out for the season. My pitching hand would have been destroyed. And so, I believe in the power of the universe. I believe in, putting things out and I'm not going to go deep into vibrations and everything, but there was a reason that happened, because it solidified for me the importance of accountability and accountability to yourself. We talked last episode, Stacie brought up that the best person that you can be accountable to is yourself. And I talked about how once you sort of master that or get comfortable with it, then start to think about who do you want to be in the future and be accountable to your future self. And in that moment when I was devastated, as much as a 16-year-old can be devastated over this missed opportunity for a vacation, I was quickly reminded by a profound question, not angry. My dad wasn't coming at me with it, telling me what to do or not to do, just asked me a simple question. And then in my reflection, which I think is where we can probably take this story to, and the power of reflection is, I was easily and quickly reminded of just how bad things can happen when you're not accountable to yourself.
Yeah, there's a lot of lessons there. And I think we've all had these moments in our past. And one thing I'll say is, as a parent, I've found is if with teenagers, if they get angry, you're probably getting it right. That it's something they don't want to hear and something that they know is true. I've found that with my kids. As soon as I push the button on, they're probably feeling insecure about something that they did or a decision that they made. Anger is just the first. It's not the root emotion. The root emotion is typically fear or sadness, but the initial reaction is anger, right? Again, non-frontal lobe development equals kind of an irrational response. And I think what as you articulated so well, is what you were really experiencing there was a little bit of shame probably, and grief. And so we also wanted to talk today about giving yourself grace, but also continuing to hold yourself accountable and walking that line. And I think it's a hard line to walk for grown people, and especially for our kids, and even as we transition this sometimes into the corporate world, into being a leader. And so the first thing to really talk about is giving yourself grace, because this is a journey. And we've said that many times when we've talked about building habits and optimizing your life and changing what you're doing and all these things. The first thing is to give yourself grace, because the lack of grace, what that looks like is shame. And sitting in a shame spiral and sitting in your sandbox of shame is not helpful. It's a very real thing, right? You feel really bad. So you're on a track to change the way that you're eating. And everybody's had this experience. So this feels very universal. And if you haven't, then you're a cyborg, because otherwise, like, food is hard for people, right? Food is emotional. Food is familial. Food is social and cultural many times. And so for some people, as soon as they hit stress or as soon as they hit pressure, right? So I'm going to really eat clean every single day is something that people might strive to do. So what I've seen happen again in doing this work for a long time is people slip once and they just say, never mind. And because they don't go back and reflect and say, hey, I'm going to give myself grace that I had a rough day yesterday, and that I had one bowl of ice cream. That doesn't mean that I now need to consume the entire, I don't need to swing by Crumble and then go get a milkshake. I mean, that's what we do. Like, we slide, right? We just slide completely into despair pretty quickly. So I think a really good practice on accountability is to recognize, give yourself grace, and then do the next best thing, which is, we said this at the end of the last podcast, don't miss twice.
Yeah, that was a great piece of advice of James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, was he says, look, you're going to fuck up. I mean, he doesn't say it that way, but I'm going to say it that way. Yeah. You're going to slip, and we're human, and that happens, and you have to give yourself the grace. But the key is that when you understand that you've given yourself grace, you're not giving yourself an out. You're not giving up on the habit. You are just acknowledging that you're human and things happen. And then the commitment steps in to say, but I'm not going to do it again. I'm not going to follow that action up by spiraling down and letting the snowball really start picking up momentum and take me all the way down to the bottom of the hill.
Yep. And I think this is where accountability partners come in, right? We talked about this before, but pick somebody that's going to hold up the mirror to you and hold you accountable, truly hold you accountable, and say, hey, I know you missed yesterday. Where are you at today? How are you doing today? This is why creating a structure and the how, the when, the why, and the where is really important. If you're supposed to message your accountability buddy about your morning habit first thing, and they don't get that message, that person should be reaching to you saying, hey, how are you doing today? What's going on? And again, this is why for me, personal trainers, for example, that are kind of boot camp type personal trainers don't work for me. And I would tell you don't work for most people, because they lack the grace piece of this, that giving people grace is part of it, but is finding the balance between that. And as we've said many times, is that a story, or is that the truth? Saying that to you. So if you miss once, you don't feel good, something happens, you have the bowl of ice cream, okay, you just consumed 200 calories, 300 calories.
That were delicious, by the way.
That were delicious. And give yourself, a pat on the back. That
enjoy that.
In the moment, that's what you needed.
Yeah, enjoy that. Enjoy that it was there. But I think the reflection piece of it, though, the key to being able to not miss twice is having a little bit of self-reflection and saying, okay, well, why? You mentioned it. I had a rough day. Why'd you have a rough day? What happened? I had an interaction with somebody that I really care about, and the interaction didn't go the way I thought it would. Why? My expectations were this. And you can start getting into a series of questions that get you to a place where you go, okay, now I have a better understanding why I reached for the ice cream. I found my trigger, right? You talk about behaviors. Behaviors are usually launched by a trigger. And we all have our own thing, right? Some people have, hey, you know what? I'm incredibly stressed. Stress is my trigger that leads me to a bottle of wine. I am incredibly tired. I'm overly tired, and that leads me to, getting out of my sleep routine, whatever it is. But you have a trigger that launches you into a behavior, and that behavior may not serve you well. But if it's the bowl of ice cream, figure out what the trigger was, and then try to avoid that trigger next time.
Yeah. For me, all roads lead to chips and queso and maybe a margarita.
Not necessarily in that order.
Not necessarily in that order.
For me,
right.
the margarita comes first.
True.
The bag of chips and salsa with queso.
Yeah. And what's funny in what you just said is I always go back to where does that come from? Not to get too deep, but I talked about this with my grandparents that raised me. We used to eat at 4:30 and we'd have to second dinner. And my grandma started buying Doritos and Mexican Velveeta. And if you're too young to know what the hell I'm talking about, it's delicious. And I think made of some plastic synthetic substance. So I'd make like this bowl of Velveeta and like dip nacho cheese Doritos, like double cheese, double down on the cheese. And so I remember like you go to these places of emotional experiences that felt good to you to soothe yourself, right? So if I had a really hard day, then that for me takes me to this place of everything's okay. And then I feel like total shit about myself that I just did that to myself because I'm really trying to eat clean. So I think mechanisms that you can also do, in my house, Tuesday's Taco Tuesday, and we eat queso on Taco Tuesday, right? And so it's become like what I've tried to do is replace that as a mechanism for me that I go to too frequently once a week, I indulge in that treat for myself that feels really good and harkens back to a really positive time. And I share it with my family now. It seems so silly, but these are the things that change behavior. So now I'm getting it on a regular basis is something that I really love and enjoy. I love cheese in general, so I'll just put that out there. But
we're not sponsored by the dairy
we're
industry.
Not. People say like, oh, I'm off dairy. I'm like, that is just blasphemous. I am all about eating healthy, but I'm also about finding a balance. And so I think as you think about, there's no absolutes in anything. As we talk about building habits, you're going to have a day where that habit stack doesn't go exactly how you planned. So the next step is to give yourself grace, but do get to the root cause of why. I love that as a practice, and it's not an easy thing. No,
it's not.
It's easy to say and really hard to do. It took me a while to figure out that it was what was triggering my need to do that, and then what that meant for me emotionally, like connecting those dots. And this is the shit. Like it's freaking hard to be really self-aware. I've said this a lot to people, especially to leaders that I know Blake and I coach. It is not an easy thing to walk around the world and really think about why you're doing the things you do, how you're showing up. So I don't think on this podcast we're ever going to tell you that this shit is easy stuff. What we're trying to do is create simplicity in this complexity so people can bite-size piece this into places in their life that they can install this behavior and these changes. Yeah. But it's freaking hard. There's a lot of people that bump around in this world completely oblivious to their own behavior, their own actions, and how they could create a better life for themselves. They want to sit in victimhood. They want to sit and all the reasons why they can't in the story as to why they can't make anything happen for themselves. These are the people in your life that gravitate to negativity. These are the people in your life that tell themselves a story that they are not capable of doing what they need to do. And if you look at people in the world who have really encountered everything that has not gone in their favor and still end up working their way to the side of being a positive person every day. If you experience those people, a friend of mine, Alan Plunkett, has a podcast that I highly recommend to people because he captures these stories, people that persevered through dramatic challenge. If you've ever been involved with youth charities and outreach, the things that kids navigate through and come out the other side and are so positive and grateful for how they're showing up in their life. It's incredible to experience those stories. And we may have Alan on at some point. I was on a board with him at one point, and we had a board member that had a movie made about him. So it would be a great story to tell, because it's about this perseverance and installing habits and being mindful and being aware. But I did want to say, I don't know what episode this is for us, but I wanted to say out loud that this is not easy work. And so giving yourself grace, but again, holding yourself accountable.
Yeah, no, I think it's incredibly important for people to understand that. The grace comes in many forms too. I think that's probably something to mention. And taking that grace and instilling, just kind of looking in the mirror and giving it back to yourself is really truly a gift. Okay, but it's not a gift that you can continue to give and wallow in, right? We talked about don't give yourself an out. So there's a limit to it, because you have to hold yourself accountable. So if we bring this back for our listeners, and you're saying, well, how do I apply this, right? So how do I really take this and incorporate it into my life? I think one of the first things that you can do is, when you have the awareness, and I love the fact that you shared this, Stacie, is that in your house, Tuesdays is Taco Tuesday and we do queso. When you have the awareness that if I have one of these moments where something's going to derail me, my go-to is that bowl of ice cream or that bowl of queso. Incorporate that into your life, into your routine intentionally. Put it in there somewhere so that if it happens on a Tuesday, hey, great, the day's lined up. Well, guess what? If it happens on a Sunday, you can probably have a moment with yourself when you go, hey, you know what? I'm not gonna. I know I've got that queso coming in a couple of days. I'm just not going to go there right now. So you have to go ahead and get that balance in. We mentioned, I think in episode 1 or 2, we're talking about Jeff Bezos's morning routine, or Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's, workout routine. But there's something about The Rock that people who follow him probably know, because he's pretty open about it, is that he has a cheat meal day. And his go-to right now, and I'm sure it has been for a while, is this incredible dish that you look at it on his Instagram and you're just salivating. It's like these 4-inch pieces of brioche French toast smothered in peanut butter and Terramana tequila maple syrup. It
seems there's a lot of detail.
Yeah.
That you know about.
Let me clear the saliva out of my mouth. He literally, though, he puts it out there. I think he's trying to, though, say, look, hey, I'm human also. And he intentionally incorporates it on a particular day. He knows I can't strip my life of all pleasure. I know that if I'm going to have a tough day, maybe that's his thing. But he puts it in an intentional place. Similar to your family, I put it in on Tuesdays. I know that it's going to be there. I think that is probably a very practical application of this practice, because it is a practice. To your point earlier, it's not easy. But you have to start somewhere, and you have to start with something that you can easily do, which I think if you just give yourself and say, hey, you know what, this is the thing that I go to, and I'm gonna put that into my week in a manageable form, in a balanced form, so it's not a whole carton of ice cream, it's the bowl, and then just have that as you give yourself grace. You know that it's there for you.
Yeah, and so to habit stack from last time, right? We asked you to create a new morning habit, and that is first thing you wake up, instead of looking at your phone, if that was a mechanism for you, create a new habit that you're habit stacking. Create a specific level of accountability on the who, the when, the where, and the how. You're going to create accountability. So the next step is the next morning that doesn't happen. Just take a second and pause and think about why it didn't happen. I want you to think about how that felt, right? How it felt. And also maybe a little bit about the why. And again, challenge yourself. Is that a story or is that the truth? Because we can all explain away our indiscretions. I could tell you how I could eat queso every day for the rest of my life. And I could probably tell myself a story on why I need it, because I need the calcium, because it's good for me. It makes me feel good. You can tell yourself a story about anything. So that's your next step to me, is to after you've built accountability that makes sense, and then tell your accountability partner, hey, hold me accountable. I didn't text you, I didn't message you or Marco Polo you and say, I did this today. Can you make sure that you hold me accountable? And then really take that pause and understand why. Give yourself grace, but do it the next day.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, hopefully from this episode, you guys have realized that this is, it is a process. We're hoping that we're guiding you through that. We're sort of being the routine and habit Sherpas for you through this process. We're probably going to touch on this a little bit in the next episode, but then we're going to move on to some other topics of how we can continue to evolve and optimize the different parts of our lives that mean something to us. And we hope that you've gathered some information that you guys can apply. The key to all this for us is that it's not information just for the sake of talking. We want you to take something from this. We want you to incorporate it into your life, and we want you to get a benefit from it. And that benefit is defined by you. It doesn't have to be somebody else's benefit. Do not define what matters to you based on somebody else's level of success or definition of what it matters to be good at something. You determine that. And if that just means one simple thing, celebrate the shit out of that because it matters to you.
That's right. Optimize AF, people. So hashtag Optimize AF for your day today. And until we talk to you next time, really elevate your life in a way that's meaningful to you.
Yeah, and say hi to your neighbors.
Do that too.
Yeah, just do something simple. Say hi to your neighbors today.
Be kind, people. We will talk to you next time.
Take care, everyone.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to our show. You can find Blake and I on social media channels at Blake Greyhans and at Stacie Mallon.
Be sure to follow Optimized AF on Instagram and rate and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes. See you next time.